Guys, this is Kyle from Atomic Bronco, and today I just kind of wanted to walk you through one of my tracks off of my latest album, Night Flowers, which is available on Spotify and Apple Music, also at my website, atomicbronco.com. I just kind of wanted to give a little insight into my process and how I recorded this album in general and this song in particular. So this is Paper Stag, the last song on the album. It's an instrumental, and we'll just hop right into it. So I'm working in Ableton Live, which the whole album is recorded in Ableton Live. I've been using this program for years, so know it pretty well. This is kind of a typical setup for most of my sessions. So I start off with the drums up top, and then go down into the bass, guitars, and then the pianos and pads and stuff like that. So this song is really kind of driven by the guitars. So this little rhythm track here that isn't playing is my scratch track, so I would have recorded this first, just to give me know where I'm going with the song. So the song kind of starts off with one chord progression, and then it changes and rides that out the rest of the way. I'm kind of showing that here, so if I'm recording other parts, I know where I'm at. But this guy's real dry, just trying to, even out of tune a little bit, but just enough to give me an idea of where the song was going so I could record. So I would have done this first, and then I would have done the drums and made sure those are in time, and then the bass and the guitars and everything else. The song is really kind of driven by this main guitar part here. So this really is throughout the whole song, and it is mostly through how I did this was I recorded direct into my audio interface, which then plugs into my computer. So I didn't record through an amp or anything like you might at a bigger studio, but I'm kind of in a little studio and can't record all that loud, so this is how I kind of made most of the guitar tones on the album. And what this is doing, this guitar rig from Native Instruments, I really like this because it's really versatile. You have amp simulations, all that, but this is run through what's meant to be a Fender kind of twang reverb amp cabinet, and then the signal splits out. So you've got one side that goes to this kind of tape echo, which is a little drier, and then this side is like a delay, reverb, big chorus kind of thing, and then you blend between the two signals here. So if I play this out a little more, you can kind of come over here, and it's a little drier, and then over here, it's real spacey, ethereal kind of stuff. So I've got it set about here on the song, and that kind of plays throughout. And then the next kind of track is this strummed guitar part. So, and you can kind of hear that tremolo actually, which is done with an LFO on the volume knob up here, and then it's run through like a Marshall kind of setup. And these two together sound pretty good, I think. So those two kind of guitars really lay down the home base of the song. And then the next kind of thing that comes in some of the bigger parts is this dirtier little guitar. Yeah, so that is in, just as we're building up before these breakdowns. And then the last guitar is this lead guitar part, which is the same setup as this main picked clean guitar part, except I've thrown a tube screamer up top just to give it that bite ahead of everything. And so, and then it's blended more towards the reverb side of things. So all these together really kind of fill out that sonic palette, really kind of fill up the space in the song, and that is probably the most prominent parts of the song is in the guitars. And then what I'll do, and I do this for a lot of my different groups of tracks, is I will group them together and run them to a common guitars bus, so then I can process these signals the same. So what I'm doing here is running them through an SSL EQ and kind of filtering out the lows and boosting some of the low mids. And then I've got an EQ that is really trying to notching out some frequencies where there's some resonant hanging from the reverbs of these two guitars. So I've got quite a bit of it on this track on its own. Just these resonant frequencies are really pretty wicked. So if I solo this and take things off, you can really hear it, the difference. And that helps to take those away a little bit. So I've got that EQing going on here, and then also at the bus level. And then I've got it running through a bus compressor just to kind of add a little boost and kind of glue everything together. And then I've got this RC20 retro color, which I really, really like. This is on a lot of tracks on this album. And what it does, it's like a multi-effect unit from XLN Audio, and it's or XLN I think. And basically they've got you can add some vinyl noise, a little bit of wobble, distortion, and it's not doing much in this case, but it just kind of adds that little polish to the guitars. And I really like the way this thing kind of brings things together. So so that's pretty much it for the guitars. The next thing is we've got this bass, which is not super prominent in this mix, but right, so nothing too crazy going on there, but it does add that low end. And we've got another instance of guitar rig that's just run through like a bass amp and guitar rig. EQ to take off a bunch of the real lows just so it's not super muddy down here, and then a dip in the high mids and the highs. A compressor with the 1176 from Waves, which is nice. And then I'm boosting back up the bass with some additive EQ with this API 550B here. And I really just like the way that sounds coming out of the end of that. It adds a lot of character. And then what I'm doing, this is a trick from dance music, is I'm putting a sidechain compressor on just the low end frequencies so that this doesn't interact with the kick. So basically what this is going to do is you've got anytime the kick is played, it turns the volume down on this lower frequency band. And you can do it with the whole thing like a normal sidechain, but I like to use this multi-band compressor so that it only turns down the frequencies that are clashing with the kick. So you can see it happening there. And that just helps the kicks really stand out. They do that in dance music all the time. And I just like to do that on my tracks with that Fab Filter Pro MB, which is really nice. That kind of brings us to the drums. So what I did for the drums, there's a lot kind of going on here, but this I used an acoustic drum simulator. So I've used Superior Drummer on some of the tracks. This Addictive Drums is really nice, and basically what this does is gives you a kind of acoustic drum simulation. So again, I'm in a pretty small studio, so I just played on my electronic drum set into this Addictive Drums plugin, and then it records itself as MIDI, and then that's what's going on here. And so then that lets you adjust individual notes, and I try to leave it alone as much as I possibly can, but sometimes I'm off a little bit, and so you can adjust those here. But then what we're doing is then after I've recorded all this and get everything how I want it, I'll actually record out, do a separate out on the kicks, the snares, the toms, and all that stuff. So, and then I'm also sending it to the master here. So then I'll record it out to these main outs here, and then these become my kind of primary drum sounds with the kick, snare, hi-hat, overhead, all that stuff. And then I'll also keep this whole kit together here, and I will add a bunch of saturation and compression to really dirty these up, and then I'll blend the two signals together. So that gives me kind of some fuller drums than you might normally get. So this has quite a bit of drive, saturation from this decapitator from Soundtoys, which is really nice. And then I've got a FabFilter Pro C2, adding quite a bit of punch to the drums here. And so then I've got this really compressed, kind of dirtier signal, which is nice because then I can blend that in with everything else. So then these are just like the regular kicks, and I've got a transient master from Native Instruments just to mess with the attack and sustain. I use this on most of my drum sounds, and then EQ. Similar thing going on here with the snare. I've got this gate on here to gate out to get rid of the bleed over snares from when the kick drum plays when the snare isn't. So that's what that's for. And yeah, you can see it there. Another transient master decapitator for some saturation, and then EQ. And then what I'll do is I'll just duplicate this whole track down, and I'll put a reverb right on the track and put the mix up to 100. So then that gives me this real reverbed out snare that I can then blend in with this snare. And you can just add a ton of space to your whole drum mix just by doing the reverb on the snare. You don't really need to have it on everything necessarily. You can add a ton of space to your drums doing it that way. And then I've got this hi-hat, not doing much to because it's only this one part of the song. I've got these two overheads that are from the Addictive drums, and then I'm boosting up the highs and lowering the mids and lows so that it really kind of brings out that hi-hat and ride and the cymbals. And then what I'll do is I'll pan those left and right to just add that sense of space in the drums and the mix. And then I will go down to these toms, and I'll record out the toms, and I'll add this drum bus from Ableton, which is nice because it does a lot of things all at once. So it adds this drive, a bunch of crunch, and then boomy low end, as well as dampen up some of the highs, and then you can lower the transients so the toms don't ring as much. Yeah, so I'll do that on the toms, and then I'll have an acoustic drum bus that covers all of that, and I'll do another drum bus there just to add a little more punch, and then I'll put another RC20 up on the whole drum thing just to add a little more distortion, a little bit of flavor to the whole thing. So everything up to here was played by me at one point, and then I've added in a tambourine and a clap, which are just add a little bit of space throughout the mix. And it's nice. This tambourine, I've added a pan man from Soundtoys, and basically what it does is it moves it around in the mix. So moves it from more on the right side of your ears to the left side throughout the song. Just kind of nice little way to mess around with the space. So then we've got yeah, that's kind of it for most of the stuff. And then we go down to my kind of pads and piano. So this looks a little weird, but basically what I had to do is my computer, it's not really powerful enough to do what I want it to do. So a little trick you can do if you're ever running into CPU issues like I was, you can take whatever plugin and then just get all your settings and record it to audio without any other processing. And that gives you like a dry signal, and that'll save on CPU. And then you can just deactivate this, and you keep it in case you want to change it. But I had to do that on a lot of songs, just to a lot of tracks on this album, just to get everything to work at the end when you export it out. But this first piano is just a radical piano with a little distortion saturation unit on it, and it's sounds really nice. It's not very prominent in the mix or anything, but it does add that little character, which is a nice. And then I've got a Mellotron from Arturia, and I really, really like this thing. So it basically is a reproduction of like an old Mellotron unit, which has audio on a little tape wheel, and then it samples it back. You can add all these things, and the Arturia version's nice because you can load in your own samples. But I've kind of done a classic little choir saying male, boys, and female, and then it's set to play all of them. So you can blend between two mixes, but I just have this set to all. And I really like this thing. It's kind of got a lo-fi vibe, and I've used this on quite a few, probably half the tracks on half the songs on Night Flowers has this in some form or another, and I just really like the way this thing sounds. Yeah, just kind of otherworldly. I really, really like it. And then I've got an organ, and then a pad that runs through the whole song. And these are both from Contact. And this is really nice. This adds a lot of atmosphere that plays really well with the guitar reverb. And then what I'm doing is adding another instance of this EQ to notch out the frequency, the resonant frequencies that are kind of same with guitars. And then that brings me to the vocals. So there's no lyrics in the song, but there are some vocals. And this, let's see what this sounds like. It's just me doing oohs and ahs. You can see it's real heavily processed. So what I'm doing here is I've got a fab filter to take out the lows and highs, so it gives it that lo-fi kind of sound. I got a gate to take out all the mouth noise as much as I can, and then I'm using a LA3A compressor to boost it up, and really just kind of, this is pretty small waveforms, so really just trying to boost up the sound. And then I've got a Fab Filter Saturn, which is a multi-band saturator distortion unit, and this is set to like vinyl saturator, that warm tube on the different. I really like this thing. It lets you process the different bands separately. So if you want your bass frequencies to be real distorted and your highs not so much, this will let you do that, and love it. But really what's doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this track is all these return tracks that I'm sending these to. So if I do this, I'm sending it to all these return tracks. So I've got a delay from Echo Boy, which is just going to be like a half note delay, and which doesn't really, it just adds a little bit of space because there's these elongated notes. Another slapback delay, kind of like a spring reverb thing. I've got a hall reverb, and this I'm sending the whole signal from these vocals is getting sent here. So if we solo this, see how spacious that gets. And I really like this Valhalla vintage verb. It's on a couple different things. I really like it. And we've got a couple other room reverb, play reverb, just a lot of reverb to add that space for the same sound. And I like doing that on these things, on my tracks. So then I've got a space modulator from Valhalla as well, and I really like this thing because it kind of sounds like a chorusy reverb kind of thing. And it's pretty wild. And it's really, really nice. And then I've also got this Valhalla shimmer, which adds a lot of just this. If I solo this. And it's almost like an infinity reverb kind of thing. Anyway, that's pretty, it just adds this layer of space to the vocals that I think really help the track. So then the last kind of thing I've got going on is this Fab Filter Pro R, which is set up mostly for the drum reverb. So I've got a lot of, and that just this is a pretty spacious song, so I really felt like the drums needed this to fit in well. And I'm sending this whole acoustic set there a little bit, and then I'm sending the dry snare there as well. So I'm getting 2 flavors of reverb on my snare, which I think helped a lot on this. And then the final return track is this meta flanger from Waves. And I really like this thing, just almost on its default setting. And then I'll send certain elements of it there. So I've got the vocal synth there a little bit. I got this tambourine, but really one of the tricks I like to use is I'll send my whole drum bus there as well. And that is nice. That's a Tame Impala trick, so he does that, and he does it way more of an effect than I do, but it's a little more subtle the way I do it. But I really like doing that on my tracks, and did that on most of the songs on this album. And that kind of brings me to the end, so there's not really much else going on in this track. So if you like this or found this informative, hopefully you learned something. Subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media at Atomic Bronco. Check out my album Night Flowers and this song Paper Stag, which are available for streaming on Spotify, Apple Music. Yeah, all that's good. And until next time.